Sarah, you went probably down the middle with this one for Blake Austin. Why'd you go for that?
Well, I think tying in with my prediction of Warrington being grand final winners, I think if Austin can come over and do the job, I think he'll be the one that's steering them around the park and leading them to the grand final win. And getting to the grand final, you play more minutes than anyone else. So yeah, I've gone with Austin. Yeah,
I mean that's where I went as well. He was on the verge of breaking into the rep setup and into even Australian honours only 2-3 years ago. And when you look at him for Canberra, he is someone who has been able to change games on his own, and he's really got fans behind him as well, which I think will carry a bit with this voting system as well. I think there will be an element of sort of fan pressure will creep into the legends, whoever the legend is, their sort of thinking. Alan, you did go differently, and you went with the perennial favourite, James Roby.
Yeah, and I made this prediction before I knew about the change in the system, and the rationale behind my decision was based on, last year we went for an Australian import. Let's go for a homegrown player next year, as they've done with dream teams before now. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, obviously, as you said, halfbacks and hookers tend to do pretty well in terms of Albert Goldthorpe points. So it'll be rare that there's a Saints game where Roby's outside the top 3 performers on the pitch. So I'd probably be a bit stronger on that call actually now.
Yeah, any 80-minute hooker's going to be in with a chance of getting votes because they do a lot of work both ways, don't they?
Yeah,
exactly.
I might change mine to Roby. No, I'm sticking with Walmsley, but Roby was my second, the second one in my mind. But we'll see how they go. What other things came out of the anything interesting that came out of the Man of Steel votes that we received, Tim?
Yep. So the listeners lined up with the bookies on the top 2. So Austin and Roby. Jake Connor is an outsider, relatively, at 25-1. But I think that's all pre the system change. I think that's only going to favour Jake Connor, so I wouldn't be surprised to see his odds. In total, 37 players received votes, so less than the actual Man of Steel voting from last year. We're not going to get as much fun out of it, are we? With it, it's done weekly.
Do they not get any say? Do they not get any say in it? Is it because we haven't really been revealed the full breakdown of how it's going to work, have we?
From what I saw in one of the trade papers last week, it is basically going to mirror the Goldthorpe, that it's going to be entirely week by week voting, that you're going to know what's happening and not going to have a blackout like they do in the NRL or the other Australian sports.
I read that they would have hide the results for a period at the back end. So I think we're still a little bit in the dark, aren't we, about how it's going to work. But I mean, I suppose there'll be some players.
Sounds clear as mud.
There'll be some players who are gutted about not getting the chance to have their say, and there'll be other players who will just enjoy not having the inconvenience of having to list off every French player that they know.
Who's going to vote for Gareth Benyon now? No one, because he's in the championship.
Not stop some votes.
It wouldn't. Joint fifth favourite with Betfred was 20-1 was Sam Tompkins. He only actually got 1 vote in our poll. Also at 20-1, and his effective replacement at Wigan, Zach Hardacre, got 2 votes. And the best one, the what I call the Fluid Yaha vote, was Gareth Widdop receiving 1 vote, which will be impressive considering it's a year earlier than he's expected to arrive, unless something happens.
The person who went for Gareth Widdop, though, if I remember right, submitted their votes before... submitted their votes before Gareth Widdop signed for Warrington for 2020, so maybe they were hoping that a Gareth Widdop deal had been pulled off for 2019 when they made that call. But that was a fantastic one, because it did come after Gareth Widdop had categorically said he wasn't going to be leaving St George for 2016.
Or maybe he knows something we don't.
I was going to say maybe it was his agent, I don't know.
It just wanted to have his name mentioned in this exclusive, illustrious podcast. Okay. Anything else before we move on to the championship ones?
No, let's get on with it.
Fair enough. So what we're going to do with the championship is we're actually going to have a championship preview show. Me and Alan are going to do that next week. So we're probably going to talk a little bit more detail about things there. So what we'll just do here is kind of get everyone to quickly run through the people who got the most votes to get promoted and get relegated, then quickly run through each one of the individuals, each one of our predictions, and give a little bit of an explanation. But let's not go too much on it. Sarah, do you want to take us through the who the voters most think are going to get promoted from the championship?
Yes, so the runaway leader for who's going to be promoted from the championship was Toronto with 71% of the votes. Widnes came second with 16% of the votes, Bradford with 7%, and then Toulouse with 4%. Tim, who did you go for?
Yeah, I went for Toronto. I think they were just so close last year, and I think with the signings they've made have been pretty good. You know, much as I dislike him, John Wilkin. But also, it really hurt. But also the advantage they have with the travel and the home advantage and the massive crowd and the spirit they get of their team just gives them such an advantage. And I think that's just over a just mainly straight knockout system, playing weekly rounds. That's only going to help them. Okay,
and how about you, Alan? Watching a bit more of that division.
Yeah, I also went for Toronto, but bear in mind I made this in mid January, and I'm on the Bradford Bulls promotion train now, so I'm building my case to get way overexcited.
Right, let's talk about that nonsense on Monday. I'm putting a note here. Ask Alan if he needs medication on Monday.
Let's demolish Alan's arguments. Cut winners already this year. Yeah, no. In all seriousness, I think Toronto clearly, in many ways they still match they have the advantages they had last year in terms of squad. I think the teams that are around them, I think Widnes are kind of probably in a consolidation phase, and I don't necessarily see anyone else ready yet. So yeah, for me, yeah, I mean, I think the votes show that. I think they're the overwhelming favourites, I would say.
And how about you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm with the other guys and most of the listeners as well. Toronto, like Tim said, they've recruited pretty well. I think all their on-field situation is just going to be better. I think they're going to play a style that involves less grubbery. Not saying you'll be able to take it completely out of some of their players, but less grubbery. And I just think they've got a little bit more class than they had last year, and then the rest of the division. So I do think Toronto. What about you, Sarah? Do you agree with us all, or do you think different?
Well, I've gone for Widnes, but that's more because I just really, really don't want Toronto to get promoted. So it's kind of like back your own team in the hope that it might happen. So I'm backing Toronto, not in the hope that they don't.
Fair enough. Okay. I do believe that we had a vote for anyone but Toronto as well somewhere along the way. So there's a few people who don't fancy that away trip to Canada.
Yeah, lots of reasons, but that's for another show, I think.
No, I mean, no. You can give some of the reasons now. I'm sure it'll get lots of conversation amongst the listeners.
I don't like Toronto. I don't. As in, I've not actually got a problem with the city of Toronto. I've not been. I'm sure it's lovely, but I don't agree with Toronto being in the Super League, in the rugby league setup, in our rugby league setup. They should go and start their own.
Is it because they've stolen your kit for this year? Is that what it is?
Nah, they're welcome to it. I just think it's putting really unrealistic pressure on fans. Part of the love of rugby league is being able to go and travel to matches. You know, even in Hull, where we're the back end of nowhere, we can still get to matches within a few hours. But to have to get on an aeroplane, deal with jet lag, travel all that distance, financially it's a non-starter. And I just think, yeah, expand the game, but let's actually look after the game in this country first of all.
So I sympathise with particularly people like you who go home and away everywhere around the country, having that feeling. you know that I don't agree generally with the idea of Toronto being in the competition, but it's really interesting to get your perspective on that, Sarah. So thanks for sharing that. I'm sure it will drive some chat. What about, Sarah, take us through who were the big vote getters for the other end of things for the championship? Who do people think are going to get relegated?
Okay, so the top two were quite close. Swinton with 60% and Rochdale with 59% were the two favourites to go down. And then Barrow with 32% and Sheffield with 20%.
Yeah, obviously people had two chances to pick someone, so that's why the percentages are kind of jumping up much higher than most of the other sections on this one, isn't it? Yeah, sorry to cut you off your flow there, Sarah.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I've just had an intruder. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, Alan, your shouts for the going down.
Yeah, so I went for Rochdale and Barrow. I kind of haven't seen. I've seen more of the Yorkshire teams, obviously through the Yorkshire Cup stuff. So I can't really. I haven't seen these teams yet. Although obviously I will. And I just think, I think it could be quite close at the bottom end of the league. I think there'll be a few teams scrapping it out. I don't discount Swinton from being in that group either, but yeah, for me, Rochdale and Barrow are the two.
Okay, and Mark, did you think similarly?
Similar, but slightly different. I mean, I don't want Swinton to go down because, I'm expecting them to be Wigan's dual reg partners again, and they've got a few Wigan old boys there anyway, and I kind of like the club. So I'm just kind of with your wanting Toronto to not go up, I'm wanting Swinton to not go down. So that's why I went for Rochdale over Swinton between those two, but I do think one of those two will be in trouble. I do think Alan's Barrow shout's a great call, but I've gone with Sheffield. Sheffield have had a ton of squad turnover. We'll probably talk about these things a little bit more when we do a championship preview, but they've had a ton of squad turnover, and they've lost their dual reg link up with St Helens, and I do think that almost all their best performers last year were people who were on loan / dual reg with St Helens, so I just think that's a massive blow to them. And I like the city of Sheffield, and I like the people of Sheffield, but I just think that I'm leaning towards them being in the two that go down. So what about you, Sarah?
Well, I've gone for Swinton and Barrow simply without a massive amount of reason other than Swinton, I feel, tend to kick around down there at the bottom, and then I just went for Barrow, I'm afraid. Not knowing a lot about the bottom end of the championship.
Yeah.
But as you said, it was a good call for Alan. Then clearly I do know what I'm talking about.
You're in with the masses, aren't you? So pretty much.
Yeah.
Tim, you've gone slightly away from the masses. So one of your teams wasn't in that four that Sarah mentioned. So do you want to take us through your tips to go down?
Yeah. So I think Rochdale. I think the squad they've got looks average towards the bottom end. And they've got a few players from League One to bolster that squad, so I don't see them doing a huge amount. And they've got these financial problems that have been sort of fairly well talked about, which isn't going to help them bring anyone in short term or do anything. So if they find themselves towards the bottom end, they're not going to be able to get out of it very quickly. And they were kind of lucky, well, they were lucky last year, so I can't see them doing too much. The one I've gone for that is a bit of a departure is Batley.
So go on.
I kind of just feel they've stagnated a bit.
Yorkshire Cup losers in a narrow defeat in that new pre-season tournament that has been on the lips of many.
I mean, they're not everybody in Yorkshire Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, the friends of the RFL Yorkshire Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. If you vote for us, you'll get an extra pre-season game cup. Yeah, I just get that overall feeling. I don't quite know what put my hand on it. Just there's something about them, and I think, and you still saw some of the wins they got last year were closer than decisive, and they were doing just enough. And I don't look at their recruitment, don't really feel excited. and I think they could well be one that fighting down the bottom end.
Fair enough. No, that's interesting. So everyone listening, if you are a Championship fan, or even if you're not and you want to throw your two pennisworth in, me and Alan will be speaking on the show next week about the Championship. So do send your views in, at Super League Pod on Twitter, facebook.com/Super League Pod, all of that. Let us know what you think about our Championship picks. Tim, we're going to talk about your specialist area, I suppose, now a little bit, and that's League One. And two sides will get promoted from League One. Do you want to take us through how